Official start time is 7:14 for the Thursday, July 27th meeting of the Oregon City Parks and Rec Advisory Committee. First of all, let's call roll. We'll start over with Mr. Daniels.
Bill Daniels.
Sean
Aye.
Batchelor.
Doug Neely.
Joyce Gifford.
Mike Mitchell.
Lisa Novak.
Roger Fowler-Tice.
Bill Lewis.
All right. Okay. Approval of the minutes from our last meeting. Everybody got those in an email.
Move to approve.
Second.
I don't know who
Sean
did
can do
that.
it.
Okay, Sean. All right. So moved by Doug, seconded by Sean. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Any comment cards, Mr. Lewis?
We do have one public comment for tonight.
Okay.
Two items. First, I'd like to thank those of you who participated in our cleanup day at the Filbert Run Park. And secondly, just wanted to bring up something about the movies in the park. I recently was attending a fundraiser that the McLaughlin Memorial Association was holding over at the Burgerville here on Malal Avenue. And I noticed as I was walking in a flyer talking about movies in the park. I picked it up, ordered, took it to my table, and was quite surprised to see that it's our neighbors from the north
Yes.
who are advertising on our turf. I think we ought to go out and blanket the area around Clackamas Town Center.
I noticed that too. We got that in the mail.
It's a nice brochure.
It is a nice brochure.
More color.
Yeah. I think Scott has designs on us.
Okay, just for the record, that was Mr. Tom O'Brien that lives in Oregon City. I don't think you identified yourself, so we just needed to do that. Thank you for lightening us all up here. Okay. Our feature presentation, Mr. Lewis.
Feature.
There we go. Okay, thank you very much. Today for the presentation, we're going to be talking a little bit about the McLaughlin Promenade wall cap replacement project. This was a community enhancement project, was funded in the last grant cycle and will be undertaken by the Public Works Department. So if you're unaware of the promenade, it is a designated historical piece within the Oregon City Inventory. It was a WPA project in 1938 and continues to serve us well on the beautiful promenade area overlooking the falls, and continues to be one of our key pieces within our park system, the McLaughlin Promenade. The wall caps, if you are unaware of what the wall caps are, is the structure, the physical structure that keeps water from infiltrating into the wall. So the actual concrete overlayment, which you'll see in a couple of slides here moving forward. So again, the promenade runs from the McLaughlin House all the way to the VFW. It is a linear park, was just selected as the best place to take a stroll within the city, and has some of the more key features for visitors to our area, including the Museum of the Oregon Territory, the Municipal Elevator, and of course, again, the McLaughlin House. We will have the future connection point will be included, as you're aware, for the Willamette Falls Legacy project as well. So again, the wall cap is the 2-inch thick mortar cap, which protects the wall from water infiltration, and then the freeze-thaw cycle that you get that will eventually damage the wall and make it unusable. What we had happen is, and repairs did take place in 2010, but 51 of the wall caps are currently damaged and needing replacing. We believe that the wall caps failures were a result from deficiencies in the mortar materials. So we do have engineer working on the project, and moving forward, we'll make sure that the repairs are done in a way where we hopefully will not have issues and be able to see the wall caps hold up for another 50, 60 years.
Just a question for clarification. So all 191 caps were replaced in 2010, and of those, 51 have already failed, or not all were repaired or replaced at that time?
Of the 191, I believe all of them were replaced during that time. They were done on 2 different cycles, and there is a general understanding that one of the cycles of the replacement during that period in 2010 was when we had some deficiencies in the mortar, which caused the cracking problems that we see.
It's a question I feel obligated to ask, because the 2010 funding was federal funding through the state for the infrastructure. Because of the recession, federal monies went out, it came through the city, and it came through the state, and the major grant. Why aren't the original people that did it responsible for those caps?
It's past the warranty period on the work. The original groups, the original companies that worked on the projects did come back to the table and are assisting, and we are having the work done at a substantial, we'll move forward in the project, but we did receive one bid from one of the groups, and it is a substantially smaller bid than probably would be expected from other groups that would be bidding for the work, based on their wanting to make sure that they're a good partner moving forward.
Okay.
It's good to hear.
So we did receive a grant, yay! So we do thank all the groups that we had support letters that were written. The work again will be spearheaded by the department, but it is a public park, and so there will be some connection there and making sure the work is done. Again, it is an IGA through Metro, and how we received the grant funds. We received $25,000, and again, because it's an enhancement and very much a key piece of our inventory for tourism and use for residents of the city. So again, moving forward, we're expecting our last bid by August 7th, and then we can actually go forward and move on signing a contract with one of the firms. The contractor will be determined from the submitted bids, but we anticipate again that we probably should see a pretty decent bid coming forward. The budget, again, looking at around $45,000. That does not include staff time associated. And then quality control. Wallace Engineering has been contracted to ensure the quality of the product, and that we will have an end result that will be able to hold up moving forward. During the construction period, we will have some impact, and we will reroute pedestrians and cyclists through that area onto the streets. There should be enough clearance for non-ADA users to be able to still use the park and walk through the park in the grass areas.
When do you anticipate this happening?
So we're anticipating fall. So this should be probably looking at sometime September, October.
Is there an estimated duration?
That I do not have at this time.
Okay.
Yeah. The timeline for the project, as it does move forward, I'm sure I can share with this group once we have that in place.
In your backyard?
Let me ask you, was that Pioneer Waterproofing that was a contractor that did the, do you have that information?
I believe that is the firm that did the work originally.
Right, and they claimed that they were beyond their warranty period on that, even though it started cracking within a year's time.
So the work was done in 2010. It's 2017 now. I'm not sure. Again, having not been with Oregon City during the first year after the work that happened.
Did they put another bid in again to have to do this work? Do you know that?
I know that there was a bid that was anticipated coming from them. And I will say that they have done work in many other areas and have been very successful on very similar projects.
Right.
Yeah.
As they were involved with that total restoration of whether it was the steps down to the falls and the railing all the way down, besides just the caps.
Yeah.
They took apart the stone and remortared, and yeah, so they did a nice work. I was just surprised that they claimed that the warranty wasn't still.
Yeah, and they've also done work on at Waterport at the parking area there, and done a lot of work regionally. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that. No further questions. We'll move on to item 6, general business 6A, Carnegie Library. Carnegie Library Park. Or Carnegie Park, or
I know I did a little bit on what I as the title of the item. So Carnegie Library Park, just to give an update, at the conclusion of our last meeting, there was discussion to move forward with a recommendation to the City Commission for renaming of the park from Carnegie Library Park to Carnegie Park. At that time, discussion also happened in regards to making connections with CIC and the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association. I did attend the July McLaughlin Neighborhood Association meeting and presented on this topic. They were generally accepting of the name change. Some were fairly supportive, others were benign, and just interested in more of the process. And so the request from that group was, we're supportive moving forward with this and have no issues. And again, this was on general terms, but that maybe moving forward, if you could try to do more of a public involvement process prior to determining your recommendation to move forward to commission. So that was the request of the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association group, but they were generally supportive of the name change at the meeting.
Was there any? I wasn't at that meeting. I was trying to remember if there was any discussion about moving the timeline from August 16th for a submittal to City Commission to a later date than August 16th.
There was not. So I did tell them that we would be moving forward to commission at some point after the CIC meeting, which would be possibly in August or September. The other piece to that, CIC does meet in the first August 7th, and I am on the agenda for that meeting, and we'll bring this forward during my presentation to the CIC. They also, again, I have not confirmed with the staff liaison for CIC to make sure the information has gone forward, but I know that we have a CIC representative here. Have you seen the, or two?
Two.
3, okay.
Yes.
If that information's been received yet by the group.
But there's a meeting coming up in which we've been invited to by the library director, and I presume it still has to do with some of this.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, you were on that, Phil. First part of August is also meeting with
Yeah.
Doug and I as the PrAC representatives, Maureen.
It's on that same date, yeah.
Yeah,
So, so the signage committee is meeting at 6 o'clock on August 7th to discuss the signs, the naming information I will present to the CIC as part of my general presentation to that group. on that same date. So the naming committee information recommendation of PrAC moving forward to City Commission will be presented. The signage committee meeting with Maureen and representatives of the library board will be a little bit earlier, the hour earlier before that at the library.
And there's a McLaughlin neighborhood rep on that also.
Yeah.
Correct. Yep.
Could be two of them, I think. What time? What was the
You're on
time
that.
again? Yeah, I didn't catch the
6
time. I
o'clock.
didn't. Oh, was it 6 o'clock on the 7th?
So 6 o'clock on the 7th is the sign committee at the library. The 7 o'clock is the CIC meeting in commission chambers.
In fact, when I talked to her, I think you were the only one she was waiting on to make sure that was good with you.
Well, I put in it was okay with me.
You did, okay, maybe that was earlier in the day. There was one person that was
I don't
outstanding. I
remember
thought it
seeing
was.
an agenda
no.
for CIC. Did that come through yet? Okay, so CIC agenda has not yet been received by the CIC representatives.
Okay, great.
I've been focusing my time on Neighbors Night Out, National Night Out. So.
And I will say that the presentation is more of a general presentation, introducing myself to CIC and the department. But part of that presentation will be to inform them that this has been a recommendation and will move forward to commission.
Okay, then this Saturday's event.
Yes. So as most of you are aware, we are in the process of planning a trail connection between the McLaughlin Promenade and Kenema Children's Park. The McLaughlin-Kenema Trail connection is part of the larger Oregon City Loop Trail. This Saturday, as part of our public involvement process, we are hosting a Greenway for a Day event, which will include dedicating specific space on one of the possible trail alignments for pedestrian and bicycle traffic, make it a little safer for users to be out on the streets and to be experiencing the space without worrying about vehicular traffic. The event runs from 9 until 1. We recommend that folks park at the Museum of the Oregon Territory on that day and then experience walking through the alignment, which will take you along the PGE property into Old Kenema Park, through Kenema, and then eventually end up at the Kenema Children's Park. Residents of the Kenema area can do the opposite route from the Kenema Children's Park to Moot and then back. It's a 1 mile either direction, so a 2 mile round trip. We will have games and activities in Kenema Children's Park. We'll have an opportunity for the public to give feedback, and we will also have a Ivy Pull event at Old Kenema Park from 9 to 11 o'clock. So if you are interested in volunteering your time and pulling some invasive ivy, and then you also will have an opportunity to experience the trail alignment during the 11 to 1 o'clock hours if you are interested.
And watch out for poison oak.
Watch out for poison oak.
I'm just going to announce the McLaughlin Memorial Association meets at that same time, and I'm on the board and probably would only be pulling ivy for about an hour.
Okay.
Later.
There's no lack of ivy to be pulled
I understand that.
in any park.
I should say it wasn't unique, right?
Okay, standing update on the Willamette Falls Legacy Project.
Yeah, so at this time, not a lot of information to share beyond that there was the transportation planning meeting that occurred, the third public event last night, and I'm not sure if I'm trying to remember who was there. Joyce was there. It was more of a wrapping back up and relaying information to the group on the recommendations through the first two public meetings. There was an opportunity for feedback. There will be further opportunity for feedback for anyone who would like to go online, and there will be an online survey for folks to fill out and give public comment, which should be open the end of this month, running through the middle of August. So if you are interested, you can go onto the project page on the Oregon City website and give public comment. The process did break options for the transportation plan into a near-term, midterm, and long-term phased approach, which took into account the building on top of previous successes of the immediate term and midterm for the long-term plans for that site. So a lot of good work, a lot of good information. They are still looking for any feedback to help tweak that, but they're pretty comfortable with kind of the general structure of the phased approach. So if you do have feedback, recommend going onto the website and providing that over the next couple of weeks.
Right. Off-leash dog areas.
Yes. So I am passing around a draft version of an online survey that we may be able to provide to the public. Again, this is my first stab at it to give you guys a base point, and I would be happy to receive additional feedback. We can discuss briefly if you'd like to at this meeting, but obviously, having just seen it, I would expect you probably would like to digest a little bit, and maybe we can come back at our next meeting, or you can additionally provide feedback through email, and I can present. So however you would like to tackle that. My general base point for how to put the survey together was trying to get a sense of who was using the park, so some demographic information. Again, everyone in this group, as well as staff, have a general understanding that folks are fairly happy with having dog off-leash areas and possibly interested in additional fenced areas. So that's kind of the my lens that I used as I was putting together the questions. There are, other questions that we might be able to ask if there was an interest of this group to get a little bit more specific as to, I did use some templates from other organizations that got very specific with types of dogs that were in the household, the age of the dogs, and looking at, the types of spaces that might be necessary for specific dog breeds, sizes, those types of things. But generally, it's a pretty basic, solid survey. We could remove or add additional items if there is interest.
I like
Would
it.
this be distributed or communicated to the public
Yeah.
website or?
Yeah.
What's our statistician feel like?
That's right. Well, I wrote at the bottom here, how many times did you visit a dog walk? I said, you ought to put rarely or not at all, but then I turned it over.
It did carry over, yeah.
I would make never / rarely.
Oh, okay. Never
Would it be worth adding to this draft the question about what other dog parks do you attend outside of Oregon City?
That's a good one.
And get an idea of what's going right or or why they don't, but at least maybe knowing how many people actually leave the area to visit a fenced dog park, for example, or even an off-leash dog park.
I like that. And you brought it up, Phil, and it makes it, because you brought it up, I would encourage you to put on there just a general statement, and I don't know how to quantify it, but I've been to dog, like the one in Wilsonville where it's a split dog park. Mm-hmm. And based on whatever that common split is, if you have a dog, is it left or right? So is it, under 50 pounds or over?
Oh, yeah.
That type of a general, because then that kind of, it gives that information if you need to build two, a split fenced area or a single.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It answers that question, I think, or could.
And we do have, so one of the question 9 does say, preferences for design might include, multiple play areas, so large, small dog designation or playful, shy dog designation. But I can appreciate that for sure, the size as well. Mm-hmm. Because if you do have a large population of, smaller dogs, having that split area would be a pretty big necessity.
And I can tell you, having St. Bernards, we went to fenced dog parks, and there are issues when there's small dogs in the same kennel.
Yeah.
But Lisa, you were asking.
Oh,
Yeah.
how would this be communicated? Would this be on our website? Would this be somewhere at a park? How would this be communicated for citizens to complete?
Yeah, so I would imagine that we probably would have it from the website as a base point. We would do communication through our standard, in trail news, social media, probably also present it as a talking point at our city commission meeting as during the manager's report kind of session time, as well as informing the public through our public
CIC.
involvement processes through PRAC, CIC.
Word of mouth
Yep.
and so on. Okay. I think it's great. I think it's a great thing. At this point, I did want to make one comment. I did receive a comment from a citizen of Oregon City, Chapin Park. There are some problems there, apparently, with individuals letting their dogs off leash, but it's not an off leash dog area, and it's causing some problems for the residents of that area.
So the request, I did speak, and it might be the same resident, and let them know that I would reach out to our code enforcement department to see if we might be able to set up a couple of times for them to come and visit Chapin specifically and educate the public on the dog off leash areas and the appropriate and inappropriate times to have your dogs off leash.
Yeah, signage. I think we do have signage there. Yeah.
We do. One of the
Dog
things that
owners
they
can't
pointed
read.
out.
The dogs can't read.
We do have signage at the front of the park, but a lot of the users are coming in through the side entrance through the neighborhood, which we currently do not have a sign there. I guess it was damaged or stolen at some point and has not been replaced. So we'll be looking at doing additional signage facing out towards the neighborhood in that area. But additional enforcement or education, preferably, should take place.
Do we have fines for individuals that, just out of curiosity,
I believe there's a small fine
There's a
for
fine.
yeah.
could be
I
revenue?
think it's in like the $200 range. I mean, small is relative, I guess, but compared to the other fines that they can get for other things that they do in parks.
It's one of those educating dog owners. You don't let your dogs run free on ball fields. That's
Or tennis courts.
I think this is great. I was answering it for myself as I was going along, and I stopped at number 8. I got a little bit confused about the word "yes, I do not" use was kind of throwing me off. So
Maybe it should
that,
be
maybe
yes,
that could just be
period.
simplified a little
Yeah, I can see that, definitely.
bit. But I think this is great. I think you hit all the bases.
Like, yes, I have no
Yeah.
bananas. Kind of
That's
thing.
right.
yeah. Okay. All right.
You're
Thanks for
dating
that.
yourself there, Doug.
Okay, moving on to Ladderette Park.
Right. So speaking of enhancement grant opportunities, as most of you are also aware, the Ladderette Park Core team applied for an enhancement grant and did receive funding of $25,000 to be used for development of a Phase 1 development of Ladderette Park. That development would include minor site alterations, which would hopefully enhance the community space, removing the asphalt on the upper courts and replacing it with a nature play area, low-level nature play experience, which might be logs and maybe a couple of boulders, things like that kiddos can climb on. Working with DPAVE to do a lot of that work and coordination. Additionally, moving the basketball hoops that are on the upper courts to the lower court. As you are aware, the vision process for the work that happened as part of their original enhancement grant, which was a year ago, the community involvement process, what we heard from the community was that they wanted to have a lower sports court, And so the basketball hoops will be moved to that lower court on an interim basis until a time that we get to a more fully developed park and able to find the funding to develop it in a real term. But in order to not lose the basketball play areas and incorporate them into the lower courts, as will be in theory, the long-term vision of that space. Working with Case and the high school to do some artwork pieces, as well as constructing picnic tables and doing some additional benches and things like that. So it's a great process. They are planning a public outreach event on September 10th, which is a Sunday from 3 to 5 p.m. They are working on the flyers currently, so we should be able to market that a little bit more in the coming weeks. But September 10th from 3 to 5, they will have a band will be there, a big yellow taxi, and they'll have hopefully some food trucks and kids activities, and opportunity for the National Park Service will be there as one of the project partners to receive feedback and start the work towards the master planning process for that property. So that's where we're at with the Ladderette Park planning and the Phase 1 development. We're anticipating the deep pave work to occur sometime in the spring.
Excellent. Any other general business? Hearing none, we'll move on. We're running through this meeting here, right? Recreation report. Did we all get copies of those?
Oh, you want member reports first?
Oh, member reports. Oh, my copy didn't have, yep. No, it's in bold. I can't see. Member reports. Roger, would you like to start?
The Pioneer Center updates. We've been concentrating on outside of the facility, removing old bushes, debris, and will replant in the fall. One area in particular is on the corner of John Adams and 6th, where big bushes allow drug activity to happen with frequency. A concrete path that was put in has been well received in the Peace Garden. 3, volunteer recognition will be managed by Melissa at the pool this year. August 24th is the date. I'm assuming that's our little thing we just
Yeah,
had.
that's at the park, at the concert.
4, classes are going well and trips are full. That's it.
That was for the Senior Center report. You didn't preface that, but thank you.
Oh.
The Pioneer Center report.
Right, I've got music on my
Places to be.
Okay. I've attended the first of a series of McLaughlin-Kanema Trail Plan advisory group meetings. Very interesting, a lot of conversations going on there, a lot of interest in the trail. I'll also be attending this Saturday. I'll be attending that as well. A couple of concerns. We want to be near the water, but we want to be near the river, but 99 is just too busy. And so for a relaxing walk, it may not be feasible. So these are things that we're looking at. More information to follow. I've also attended a couple of the concerts in the park, and I really got to give kudos to everyone involved, the staff. It really was fun and well organized. I was really impressed. Both times parking was a breeze. The logistics, just a whole lot of fun, and the organization that is involved with it, organizing, and the logistics. Really, got to give kudos to everyone involved with that. Really proud of our city, and proud of the team that puts that together. So, thank you.
Parks Foundation, we met 2 nights ago, and I think probably most of the evening, or the main thing was we received a couple of grants, an enhancement grant for ivy removal at Waterboard Park, and that's going to require a lot of volunteer hours. And as was mentioned earlier, If you can't get your fill of ivy pulling at Old Kanema Park from 9 to 11, we can cruise over to Waterboard Park and pull ivy there. But then if you do that, keep track of your hours, because we have quite a substantial number of hours that we have committed to as matching funds for that grant. And then the other grant is a grant from the Hardy Plant Society for plantings at the VFW Museum of the Oregon Trail territory, end of the McLaughlin Promenade. Right? So we talked about our strategy for that.
Well, originally the grant was for Pioneer Center and that area by the VFW.
Okay.
That strip going up. So,
Okay.
not the museum. So.
Okay, sorry.
No.
My mistake.
Can I say something about the ivy pool? And
Yes.
Okay, it would mainly be ringing trees in Waterboard Park, because they're going to be spraying the stuff on the ground. So that's what we're going to be concentrating on.
Yeah.
So not so much
Thanks, Roger.
pulling,
The,
just
the
clipping.
the grant is for spraying of ivy on the ground, but prior to that, we need to ring the trees. Right? Okay. That's it.
Okay, Doug.
Oh,
Yes, these are a couple of things I announced actually at the NRC, but since we've had discussions about invasive species and so forth, the Greater Oregon City Watershed Council has, over several years, worked at Abernathy Creek Park in terms of removing invasives and doing plantings. The challenge in terms of removing invasives, 2 years ago, the area was a segment of that area was covered with reed canary grass, so our concentration was to remove that and to bring in the following spring plantings. We came in the following springs and it was all choked up with blackberries at the same location. So we removed the blackberries and held off to the plantings to this last year. And we went in and we planted snowberry. And I've gone back and everything's full of nettles. So the challenge in removing invasive species is there's always another one that is just anxious to take over. And that's what I think, in terms of planning and so forth, invasive species, it's clear that you have to have follow-ups, and they do open up opportunities for other invasives coming once you've removed one. So that was one thing I wanted to mention. Another thing, the Greater Oregon City Watershed Council was involved in some of the salvage operations at the Environmental Learning Center. As you know, they're redoing that waterway and so forth. I was out there this last weekend. They are pumping water out of that area now, and they've gone into their in-stream work. So they'll be redoing the ponds, making them better. They'll also have a better stormwater facility than they've had associated with the volunteer project that was done there many years ago. But that particular project's going forward.
Okay, thank you. Sean?
Nothing. Bill?
I have nothing.
Oh, wait, I did have a question, though. What were the funding amounts?
The Hardy Plant Society was less than $500.
Okay.
The Community Enhancement Grant is
19,800
$19,800 and something or other.
Wow.
Yeah, it's very good. And it's how many acres? 9 acres?
yeah. And
Yeah.
as far as we were disappointed with the one by the VFW, that grant, but I think we're checking whether we're still obligated to do it. And if so, we're going to have to come up with some funding to do it. So,
We can talk to you more about that
Yeah.
after the meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. And I wanted to reiterate what Lisa said about the concerts in the park, which are happening right now, and that's where I hope everybody is, and that's where some of us are going to be going, because the drop-in for parks that the Parks Foundation has been doing, asking people to bring in their returnable bottles and cans, and so all of our water bottles,
these all need
yes,
to go.
10 cents at a time, and so we got about $100 worth of returnables each week is what we've been doing, and so every little bit counts, and if everybody keeps doing it for a while, the money starts adding up, and the Parks Foundation then can move forward on some of their goals as to helping beautify the parks in our city and providing some of those play structures for the kids, or bee houses, or whatever, so it's all this planning, but appreciate what's going on. Now, do we need to move on to staff reports?
Yes, so recreation report you received through email. The next item is the Parks and Recreation funding strategies. This will be a presentation in front of the City Commission. I made reference to it at the last meeting. There was a request from one of the commissioners to talk about parks districts, and again, after speaking with him offline and working with the city manager, we were going to talk about funding strategies for parks and recreation and how different communities have used different funding streams to approach providing parks and recreation services for their community. So that'll be at the next work session for the City Commission, which is August 12th, I believe, the second Tuesday of the month. So I will send out an email reminder for this group so that you can attend, and then after at our next convening, I'm sure we will probably have some additional discussion topics associated with the presentation and any directive that's given by commission after that meeting.
August 8th.
August 8th, thank you.
Okay. Future agenda items?
I have one.
I have one too.
I just want to make sure that we don't lose sight that we need to consider a park name for the future Glen Oaks site. And with construction now imminent, we should probably set that as a goal for late fall, early spring, maybe even as a kind of a kickoff to that occurring. So just wanted to bring that up.
Do we have is there a city policy on naming of facilities?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So can we maybe see that at our next meeting?
Yeah, I can provide that.
Doug and I are well versed.
Well, then maybe you can do the presentation.
Yes. First of all, and I should know who she was, and I just can't remember the name, but I think you've designated a person from the Parks and Recreation to seek out the funding for the concerts in the park and the movies, who's has more of a focus. She came to the Good Morning Oregon City talking about for next year. And I think it's great that you seek more funding, because I saw the same flyer that you did, and they're having 6 movies in the park, and as opposed to our 4. And I think the expansion should be greater. I really think that we should have if we can do it, if we can come up with business support and so forth, to actually have that full block of Wednesdays between the 2 holidays filled up like we do with the concerts. The other thing is, if we're really successful, we don't have the effort in the first week because the 4th of July is there, so we got 7 weeks of concerts. One group that was invited to most of them was the Willamette Falls Symphony. It's a volunteer symphony. But they haven't been there for a while. I'm not suggesting that they be included in the general things, but I think that the Thursday following the 4th of July, we might want to have them come and do patriotic songs after the 4th. I think would have a greater draw for that particular purpose, and they love the opportunity to do those kinds of events. And but that's contingent on the additional funding coming from the business community and so forth.
And I bet the VFW would probably do an honor guard.
Yeah, that would be great too.
You could turn it into a full-on celebration.
Well, the symphony is going to be playing during the TRAG event, the Three Rivers Artists Guild event down at the Indian Oregon Trail Interpretive
Great
Center.
ideas.
Okay,
Anybody else have
Bill?
agenda items?
List.
I don't want.
Go
Yeah, I
ahead.
have 3 that I wanted to touch on again that we've talked about at some point in time bringing forward. And since we're not taking a taking the time to have a meeting in August. Is that correct? We'll have our next meeting in September.
Correct.
I'd still like, if we have, which there probably isn't much available time, but I would like to, and I want to know if the PrAC is interested also in exploring other, like you say, other funding strategies, but at some point making a recommendation to City Commission about exploring the opportunity to form or to join another park district, park and recreation, forming that district, whether it's like I say, joining some other group that's close to us in geography, or whether we end up doing it ourselves, but at least having an opinion about why it isn't going to work or why it could work. I mean, as an advisory group, we should know that. We should have that opportunity. I'm not saying we have to have that on the next agenda item, but I would like to maybe at some point in time, certainly maybe in the winter, that we do that. I invite a guest. Maybe Scott would be interested in coming at that time. He'd have his feet wet. You obviously have some experience in that territory with the out of the Dalles. So I was North Wasco. Is that what it was called, North Wasco?
Yes.
So I really would like to, not that we have to settle anything that night, but at least get a start, a foothold on some discussion, and say, hey, this probably isn't going to go anywhere, or maybe it leads to another discussion, but at least let the commissioners know that we'd like to at least give them that opportunity to have
Is
a
that
public...
what you're doing on August 12th?
Yeah, so on August 8th, right?
August 8th.
August 8th, thank you. August 12th is my anniversary, so
Very good.
that's why it's... my wife will be happy.
Yeah, don't forget
my
that
wife
one.
will be happy.
Don't forget that
I've
one.
been thinking about our anniversary date. So the presentation will focus on different funding strategies that communities use to fund parks and recreation. So part of it will include parks districts, information on park districts, both special districts as well as service districts, which is what North Clackamas is. Special districts, which is similar to Tualatin Hills or Bend Parks and Recreation, which are two of the larger parks districts in the state. So yeah, there will be a lengthy conversation about all funding streams and avenues that the commission might take to properly fund parks and recreation. Of that will also include parks, special districts, or service districts for parks. And then again, after that presentation, and if there is directive of commission to move forward in any way, I'm sure there will be many points of discussion for this group, as well as going back to commission at some point.
All right, thank you. The other two items I had, and one we've touched on briefly, and maybe perhaps in September or whenever time's going to allow, is more information on the Buena Vista House, and putting that back into our system perhaps and generating revenue, and perhaps also on that same discussion, some funding for park pedestrian lighting in Atkinson Park, and to make it welcoming again for people to use. That whole neighborhood over there needs that kind of help, shall we say, or certainly usage. So that would be, I'd like to continue that conversation. I know that I don't know what the current status is with the house, and I don't need to know that now, but I was hoping that we're moving forward and getting that back into... I know the neighborhood was interested in donating money, if possible, to get some of that initial stages moving forward.
Yeah.
And the last item I was going to ask you about, and it kind of touches on the promenade, the Bluff Promenade, and I'll this is quick, that we as a group decide if it's a good idea to go forward with a Metro enhancement grant for that Bluff Promenade, for perhaps a yearly maintenance program for 5 years, or whatever we want to, however we want to put that into use. But to get that, of course, we know that's uniquely different than most of our other parks as far as getting to those invasives, and with the threat of falling over a cliff. So it isn't something we expect staff to do or volunteers to do, but maybe, and it was suggested, I forget which one of the planners had told the group that maybe that if we're out in front of this early enough to get an application in, I don't know, and to kind of seek out what the right amount would be, but certainly getting some bids to find out what a yearly maintenance contract might mean, where we can keep on top of those invasives and coming back and keeping that as a showpiece for the tourists as well as the residents in Oregon City.
I can speak very shortly to this because I know everyone wants to get out, but we did at one point receive a bid for knocking back a portion. It was a smaller portion focused around the elevator area, and it was something like $25,000 just to do that small section of the promenade. So,
and it could be that there are other bidders out there. I mean, that wasn't probably an RFP in the Business Journal, I'm assuming. But I mean, I think there's probably some competition that would be interested in that kind of a contract. That I would like to think that you could do that for a third of that or a quarter of that, if it's depending on how you spec it out and the amount of time they need to do it.
yeah, yep, we can definitely talk about that and try to prioritize.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so as we discussed at our meeting with Natural Resources, invasive removal was one of the top agenda items, along with finding funds for signage for some of those natural resources in our parks, especially, and heritage trees. And so we'll be having more discussion moving forward on how we can make those things happen.
And Joyce, if I can, just because now, just Prac sitting here, I think that signage needs, from Prac's standpoint, that signage, it needs to be expanded, that it's identifying natural resources, trail connections, and other various amenities within our parks.
Yes, trail connections, yes.
I mean, I'm trying to tie all this together, especially when you go for budget money. It's
Yeah.
And that's a discussion that we've had as staff as well. We have some of our parks that don't even have park signage, and so really, what types of signage should we have? Looking at putting a plan together, because a lot of times we have one-off signs and a lot of one-off signs, and so trying to be strategic with how we do signage in our parks.
That's a great point. It always bugs me that about 10 or 15 years ago we started putting these really pretty wood signs in, and they're all terrible now. And a little bit more money would have, they all need to be replaced, really.
Is wayfinding an option, perhaps, for people that are coming, or even people who live here, using the GPS as some sort of a I don't know about a game, but some sort of a finding your way through to visit parks to find out maybe there's something, and each one of them has a little bit of something special about them. People would maybe more likely want to visit all of our parks if they had the ability to find them, other than not knowing what they are to begin with, unless you have a wayfinding key or I'm not sure what
Of some sort.
Well, I think there's two, if I may, I think there's kind of almost two blended topics there. There is a sport called geocaching, which has been presented here at Prac by people. In fact, that was the first time I'd ever heard about it. But I also believe, if I'm heading in your direction, that there's a need for our park website to be updated such that every park has a brief history, when it was created, how it was funded, those sorts of things. Because if we don't do that now, 20 years from now, it's all going to get lost. Wesley Lynn was only 12 years ago, but we're going to forget it pretty quick. And I think that needs to be a winter staff project devoted, kind of slowly devote a few hours each month, during the winter, and eventually that updated, because it'd be very nice to be able to go to Google and type in, I'm at Atkinson Park. Oh, it was founded here by, or whatever. And we don't have that now. And then you can develop signage and other things, but that seems like a very foundational point to develop all those signage. This park consists of these amenities, has these natural resources, heritage trees, whatever. Is that?
Like a park app.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I was
Park
thinking that,
app
Yeah.
would lead you from
All right.
park to
Okay.
park.
Anything else?
No.
Do I hear a motion to close this meeting?
We don't need one.
No, I just
You're in charge.
hit the
All right.
There we go.